Obooters from around the world. My name is Kshiti and I'm 14 years old and I live in Pune, India. Welcome to our Oboot session where me and my co-host Ryan, who is 11 years old and lives in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. We'll be interviewing a guest changer, Swapan Mehra, who is currently based in the United States in Cambridge, MA. Swapan is an environmental finance and policy expert working on projects in forestry, biodiversity, climate change adaptation, and mitigation. He is the founder of Iora Ecological Solutions, an environmental finance advisor and project development group. Swapan's work links to several sustainability development goals, especially to Goal 13 climate action. Ryan and I will ask questions to Swapan about his background, his journey, his work, his skills, and his impact. We hope that you will enjoy the session. I will now start with our first question to our guest. Can you please tell us a little bit about you and what do you do for your work?
Well, thank you so much, Kshiti, and it's lovely to be here and it's lovely to meet both of you. Thank you so much for this opportunity to Oboot. So, like you mentioned, I've been working in the area of climate action, specifically on ecosystem conservation and nature-based solutions for more than a decade. My key goal is to enhance the resilience and adaptation of some of our most critical ecosystems, promote climate mitigation, and help communities adapt in some of the most vulnerable regions of the world. Currently, I'm in Cambridge, Massachusetts, completing a Bacon Environmental Fellowship for the mid-career MPA program at the Harvard Kennedy School, which is almost over in a week. And I'm really excited to get back to India and start working on some of my goals again.
Thank you. Ryan, you can ask a question now.
Okay. What is your typical day?
So currently, I've been studying. I came to school after many years, Ryan, which was really amazing as an experience. So I have classes, I wake up and I have to get ready for my day. So I first start by meditating a little and preparing for what's coming. I then make sure that I have all my notes and my homework ready. I then go and attend my classes, do my lectures. I've also been participating in a lot of interesting co-curricular activities that Harvard offers, including participating in an impact investing competition with RIM, the founder of Oboot, working with many of the special interest clubs here who focus on climate change and allied issues, and then also talking a lot to many professors and finally my excellent peers here in my cohort on how we can collaborate towards changing the world, improving our impact. In the evenings for the last month or so, I've also been engaging a lot in calls back home in India with my team at Iora Ecological Solutions. We are trying to brainstorm how to build forward our platform, which does all of this nature-based solution work. And we're in the process of structuring a nature investment platform and a nature fund. So there's a lot of discussions and calls back home. And then in the end, I try and call my family and my loved ones just to say hi and just to check on how they are. Doesn't happen every day. I should do more, but at least twice a week.
It's great to see that. Now my question is, how would you explain conservation policies to a normal person who does not know much about this topic?
That's an excellent question, Kshiti. So conservation, the nature has various ecosystems. Earth offers various ecosystems. All of these ecosystems have very important ecosystem services, such as your marine ecosystem regulates carbon, regulates waste, regulates water. Your forest ecosystem provides you with oxygen, regulates water, holds your soil. So all of these ecosystems have a number of ecosystem services. And when these ecosystems are threatened, when they are either forests are cut, or when oceans are acidified, or when the ocean salinity changes because of global warming and melting of glaciers, or when there is pollution, these ecosystems cannot provide their services. Now, when the services are disrupted, animals, nature goes out of balance, but also humans, we are affected. Look at what's happening now in India, in Delhi. There is a record high temperature. In the US, there are so many disasters. This is because the nature cycles are off balance and the ecosystems are not able to perform their services very well. Hence, there is a need to conserve these ecosystems, which is what has led to, in the last 40 years mostly, the need to institutionalize conservation policies. In some ways, if you think about it, it's strange, right? That we first destroyed things that were very important, and then we created policies and said, come on, let's conserve them. But that's what has happened. So conservation policies are of various kinds. Some of them regulate the use of ecosystems. Don't cut that much forest. Don't use that much of fisheries. Some of them are focused on regenerating, plant more trees, clean your rivers. So these are the major two kinds of conservation policies. And at top of these, a lot of financial instruments, a lot of other such technology tools are being built to assist in all of this. I do want to mention though, that in the end, the only way in which we can save our ecosystems, save our planet, we only have one planet, save this is by individual behavior change. Each one of us needs to become more responsible, consume more responsibly, generate less waste, and actively advocate for the rights of nature, rights of trees, rights of animals, because they don't have a voice.
Yes, I agree with you. I think we covered the question.
Thank you, Kshiti.
What do you feel most proud of?
I've been very fortunate. There's a lot that I feel proud of. I think what I feel most proud of has been my organization, the team that I've been able to build, because over a decade, we have built a team in India at Iora Ecological Solutions of like-minded conservationists, like-minded nature lovers, who are very driven by a passion to contribute towards the cause of conservation. And also because conservation relates so much to human rights, the idea of human rights for communities who are vulnerable. I think the fact that my organization has been able to inspire so many young people who have worked with us, continue to work with us, and some of them who've left and are now doing exceptional work outside is my most proudest accomplishment. Thanks, Ryan. That was an excellent question.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead with my question. It's a little bit long. Okay. So my question is, when someone wants to be in the field of climate change or any field, they usually start by changing themselves, right? So when people change themselves, they often get questioned about if you're the only person changing yourself, how does it even matter? Like, it's only one person who's changing. So if you are in that situation, what would your answer be to that person?
That's again a very good question. Wow, you guys have all the right questions, Kshiti. So that's true. That happens a lot, and that's one of the key reasons why people who want to work in not only climate change but anything that is against the norm in society get pushed back, right? I want to quote firstly Bertrand Russell, one of my favorite philosophers, who said that there was a quote which said that all progress in world depends on the unreasonable man, because the reasonable man just agrees and flows with whatever is happening and doesn't question. And if you don't question, then society doesn't progress. So to progress, you have to be unreasonable. Now, the challenge is, how do you sustain being unreasonable? How do you sustain being opposed and being looked at as somebody who's odd? And I think that requires, firstly, an inherent conviction in the cause that you're working on. Secondly, it requires you to be able to sustain the criticism that you receive from others as feedback and not as something that affects you and affects your stance, right? I think very often what happens is that we take feedback as personal criticism, not as feedback. I think you need to flip that. At Harvard Kennedy School, we learn a lot about this in the leadership courses that we do. Even us at our age are still struggling with this, Kshiti, that when we receive a lot of opposition from others, we feel that we are wrong. But the conviction to feel that you're right and to ask other people about why they think that you are wrong is very powerful. The third thing that I want to mention is that you need to exhibit two traits which every good leader has, which is again something that I've learned here. One is the trait of curiosity. If somebody criticizes you, you have to ask them why they are criticizing you. And you have to keep asking till either one of you reaches the bottom of what drives that feeling, right? And then either you can shift to their side or they will shift to your side. But it's important to ask, if somebody says, oh, you are wrong, you can't take it at face value. You have to ask them, why do you think I'm wrong? And with that process is mutual learning. The second is you have to be empathetic. You have to understand their perspective. I think one of the problems of the conservation movement, Kshiti, has been that I regret this, but for years, all conservationists around the world might have built something which was very exclusionary. Common people don't feel part of that movement. So I think you need to be empathetic and include the people who are being critical into your movement, not by arguing with them, but by listening to them. So repeat: one, you need to have your conviction and headstrong. Be strong about it. Second, you need to not be affected by criticism. Take it as feedback. Third, you need to exhibit empathy and curiosity to get down to the root of what's affecting this difference of opinion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It totally
That was a
does.
very long answer to a long question. Sorry.
No, I could totally catch up with it.
How did you start protecting tree?
So Ryan, I actually, it's a very interesting story. I actually was a software developer who was working on programming. And one fine day when I was working on this assignment in which I had to plan the route for India's first private fiber optic cable, in which it was passing through some forests, I had this moment and I was like, I cannot play a role in cutting of forests. And then I left that assignment completely and started looking at what to do. Took me a year to figure out, and then I went and got a forestry degree. And then I immersed myself in the ideas of saving forests and trees. But later I realized that the genesis of this was my childhood. So my father was an army officer with whom we moved around the country a lot. And most of my formative early years were in very remote places which were close to nature. So I had an affinity to nature from the very beginning, but it took a long time for that to manifest as a career. After I studied forestry, I committed myself to this sector, and then I built on. One other key moment in my journey was the starting of my firm, for which I also got a lot of strength from my partner, Chaya, because she also works in this space and she really supported me in the idea of starting out on my own. And that led me into formalizing my love for forests into a lifelong pursuit linked to my career. So those were the key moments, Ryan. I do want to mention that underlying at the center of all of this is my love for, like you mentioned, a tree. Whenever I see a beautiful tree, I can't stop and hug it. I have to. And I take pictures with the tree and I talk to trees. And trees inspire me. They tell me what to do. You should also try it. Trees are magical. Have you ever hugged a tree, Ryan?
No, I might.
Can you try? Perfect. That'll be great.
So my question is, what was your biggest milestone in this field since you switched?
It's a great question. My organization, my team, we've achieved some considerable results and considerable achievements in the course of our existence. I'd like to mention two important ones, two major milestones. One was our contribution towards developing a roadmap for India's NDC forestry goal. So NDC is a nationally determined contribution. So you know that now there is something called a Paris Agreement at the United Nations, and each country has to create and declare a goal on climate change. So this is the most powerful agreement that exists right now amongst countries to reduce climate change. And we played a key role in the roadmap for the forestry goal of India, which is very ambitious, which took a lot of effort, a lot of consultations with thousands of stakeholders, and a lot of discussion internally with the government. But that's something which I feel is very important. The second is that we helped the government of India develop a formula called the Finance Commission formula, which helps them decide the basis on which the tax collection of the government of India is distributed to the states of India. You know, Kshiti, about our state system, right? So states receive money from the center on tax. So that formula was adopted. We worked with my alma mater, Indian Institute of Forest Management, and together we developed that formula. And based on that formula, which is now 10% of all central taxes go to states based on forest cover. I think something close to $6 billion have been given to Indian states based on their forest cover. So I think those two are achievements that we are very proud of.
Oh, that's great.
You thought of like expanding it to like other countries?
So we have Ryan, and right now our team is working on projects in Southeast Asia. So we are working in Indonesia, we are working in Malaysia. We have been for the last few years. We have also done some projects in Nepal, Sri Lanka, and in the neighboring regions of India. We have done some amount of work in the past in the MENA region, some in Qatar only, and the UAE a little bit, and some in Africa. We are keen actually to expand in that region because we are keen to not just go in and do work, but to form partnerships so that we can learn from both sides. I do strongly feel that in Asia and Africa in general, a lot of our experiences, Ryan, are transferable because a lot of our dynamics are transferable, a lot of our political challenges are transferable. So there is a lot of merit in collaboration between our countries. So while we have projects in about 5 countries right now, this is something that I want to go back and expand. So we are at the moment identifying and getting into MOUs with partners all over Southeast Asia. And then we'll start doing the same in Africa. That's one of our goals, to expand this presence. Thank you.
So my next question is, what do you study to be in this field? Like, the subject systems in India. So like, which subjects would you recommend someone to choose to be in this field?
So Kshiti, thank you very much. That's very, very important question for people who now want to work in this space and are curious, right? So one important issue is that just like any other discipline, Kshiti, conservation requires the application of all tools of learning. So it requires the arts because we need to communicate the importance of conservation a lot. In fact, in my opinion, that's the biggest area of work going forward. If we have to inspire people to change their behavior, we need to communicate to them. If you really think about it, how many movies have you seen or how many TV series have you seen in the last 5 years which talk about climate change or conservation? Have you seen any?
Hardly any.
So you've seen so many which are focused on political activism, on racial injustice. There are you see more of those. So you need arts and communication. You need sciences. You need good sciences, not only on the biology side. You need geotechnology. You need electricity. You need computer sciences. A lot of work is being done on the application of AI for conservation, machine learning for conservation. So you need sciences to design tools and technologies for conservation, for measuring nature, new technologies which reduce the pressure on nature, wind, hydro, there is so much innovation there. Then you need pure sciences, research on genetics, how to improve tree crops, how to reduce viruses that affect tree crops, So what I'm trying to come to, Kshiti, is that you need a range of specializations, and almost every specialization can find an application in conservation. But I think what is important is that there needs to be a shift in our education so that from the very beginning, conservation is taught in school so that people know that this is a possible career. Right now, many people don't know because you know that medicine is a career, you know that law is a career, you don't know that conservation is a career. That's one. And the second thing, my advice is that once you've done your basic specialization, be it engineering, be it sciences, it'll be really good to do a specialized master's course or a 1-year diploma in conservation. So many universities around the world offer that now. Some call it environmental studies, some call it conservation, some call it climate change. And I think those are really critical to then orient your basic skill towards this cause. And I think things like what you are doing now, like these interviews that you are doing, these are very educational. People at least realize that they can think of a career in this space. But this space is going to expand, so there'll be a lot of opportunities. So I think you need to start groups with your friends which start tracking what's happening, Kshiti. I think that will make a lot of difference too.
Yes, I agree with you.
What can people do to help the environment within their communities? Like, what can they do to help the environment?
No, very, very important question, Ryan. So there are several things that you can do. The most important is to first recognize the need to conserve the environment and start living in harmony. It's the first is the thought process. The second is, on practical terms, is to reduce your impact on the environment by changing your consumption. So use less, use things which are earth friendly, use less plastic, dispose of less plastic, recycle. So reduce your consumption, reuse things that you can use, and recycle. The 3 R's, very important: reduce, reuse, recycle. Don't buy things which you don't need, very important. Don't travel unless you need to. Use energy very, very rationally. Use an air conditioner at a higher temperature. Don't freeze your room and then wear a sweater, because that way you're wasting energy. Consume water very thoughtfully. So that's very important. Very important to rationalize your food. If possible, consume less meat, because meat has a much higher climate emission profile than vegetarian food. Try and eat local. Otherwise, your food travels from very far away and there's a lot of emissions, And finally, speak about the need for environment change. Talk to your politicians about the need for environment change. The last very important thing that you can do is plant trees. One of the best things that you can do is plant trees. If both of you can plant 10 trees or 5 trees and make sure that by the time you leave school, they are big trees, would be an amazing contribution to the environment. So reduce, reuse, recycle, plant trees, use energy efficiently, try and be vegetarian, and finally plant trees. Does that make sense, Ryan?
Yes, it makes sense.
All right, great.
Yeah, so my question is, so personally, I switched from non-veg to veg like 2 years ago, and people, like my friends, they did not ask me offensively, but they wanted to know why did I switch, and I could not explain them that what's the main reason that I switched. So if you were in my place, what would your answer be to my friends?
I have been in your place, because I also switched, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago from non-veg to veg. And at that time, it wasn't even a trend. So a lot of people used to ask me all the time. And then I convinced my family also to switch. So this is, if you have switched for environmental reasons, Kshiti, and there are a number of reasons, right? So first reason is very simply that non-vegetarian food, like I mentioned to Ryan, has much higher emissions than vegetarian food, right? Now, this can be broken down into a few things. First is that if your vegetarian food is local, which might not be the case, but if it is locally sourced, then the emissions of travel of food are lesser. And if your non-veg food comes from outside, this is one small parameter. The larger parameter, and on this, Kshiti, I recommend you to go online and search. There are many studies. The amount of water and emissions used in raising non-veg food is much higher than veg food, because there is a waste in the value chain. So for the same quantity of energy that you get from non-veg food or veg food, the non-veg food, the animal has consumed a much larger amount of vegetarian energy, and because the body generates a lot of waste when it grows, so a much larger, so that animal has eaten maybe 10 times the number of grains to come up with 1 kg of meat for you, and on the contrary, you are eating 1 kg of gain. So you 1/10 has been saved. So now what does that mean in terms of emissions? So when you grow a crop, firstly you need more land. That means you have converted forest or some natural land. So that's one issue. You apply more fertilizer, which means that there is much more emissions from fertilizer. You have to put energy, which means because you need energy to transport the fertilizer, transport the seed, you need energy in your tractor. So a lot more emissions from energy. And you need a lot more water, because firstly you have to put water for that 10 kg of grains, and then your chicken or whichever meat you are eating also consume water, right? So a lot of water. Water is anyways very scarce, and to provide water you need even more energy. All of this translates, Kshiti, into a lot of emissions. In fact, I'm might be slightly wrong on the number, please look this up, but I think that the meat production industry is responsible overall for more than 25% of the world's emissions. It's huge. So I think this is what you should explain to your friends. And the other reason, which applies sometimes and not sometimes, because some countries have good practices, some don't, is also that in some cases animals are treated very cruelly, but in some cases practices are good. So I mean, that's a subjective reason that you can look at, but this is an absolute reason. The greenhouse gases, this was the reason I left, because of this impact on nature. But read about it. There's a lot of literature on this.
I will. Thank you.
What would happen, like greenhouse gas, like we kept releasing greenhouse gases? What would be the long-term result?
Did you say that? Did you ask that what will be the impact, long-term impact of increasing greenhouse gases? Yeah. So Ryan, do you know about the greenhouse gas effect, the phenomena?
No, it heats up the planet.
Yes, absolutely. So greenhouse gases, when they assimilate a lot, they lead to global warming because they trap the heat that comes from the sun within the Earth's atmospheres. So greenhouse gases are very important, by the way. If there were no greenhouse gases, we would not exist because the Earth would be freezing. So they are very important. They make life on Earth possible. But if they increase too much, then it becomes too hot. Or it becomes too hot in some places. The reason why it becomes too hot in some places is because the global climate regulates temperature through wind, through precipitation. So what happens when greenhouse gases increase a lot is that those climate patterns go haywire. There is too much rain in some places, there is too little rain in some places. There is too hot some days, it might not be that hot some days. It changes everything. One issue that happens because of this is that your agriculture productivity is affected. In some places where it becomes very hot, human beings, it's become uncomfortable for people to live. And people who are poor can't afford air conditioning, so it becomes a challenge. Then animals can't survive, because imagine if a forest which they were used to living in suddenly becomes so hot that the trees die. Species change. So those are gradual changes. Species change, people become uncomfortable, food declines. Rapid changes are in the form of disasters. Number of cyclones increase because of changes in precipitation and cloud pressure. Because of changes in ocean characteristics, tsunamis increase. Disasters. Those are the much more critical events which can cause long-term disaster, long-term damages immediately. So this is a combination of impacts that the world might feel. One important point to note is that the impacts of climate change are felt much more by poor countries and poor people than rich countries and rich people, because the rich countries and rich people can make walls to stop the sea from coming in, can increase the air conditioning when it gets too hot, can buy food from outside when food declines. What do poor people do? They don't have the resources to fight climate change. So they are the worst affected, and hence the need to act on it very, very fast.
Thanks. So I think I would like to conclude this by asking the last question. Can you please tell us a bit about your work? Like, what would you give out to the people who are listening to this? The final statement.
Well, my final statement, so firstly about my work, like I mentioned, my organization and we are committed to the idea of using nature-based solutions for conservation and climate resilience. I think that in order to mend nature, our biggest ally is nature. And we just need to support nature in regenerating herself and not enforce solutions which are not natural. I think that that's a central message in terms of broad action. And to individuals who are listening to this call, I would suggest that to our younger audience members, that there is a need for a lot of innovation, participation, and love from all of you towards nature. So please reinvigorate that love that our ancestors had, and then you are in a position to mend the world. Then in general, to all our audience members, I think it's important to understand that individual action matters. it's not only governments and corporations who are responsible to fix nature, but it is each one of us. And if each one of us starts doing our bit and talking about it, then the governments and corporations will be forced to change their ways, because they respond to what we need. So I think that it's critical. If you look at all the reports from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, it's very late. We need to act immediately. Otherwise, we are at a tipping. We might already have crossed the tipping point, but there is still a chance to reduce our emissions, pull us back. But if we don't do it immediately, then we might have lost the opportunity. So I think it's time to act now, and together we can do it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you that we need to act more on climate change. So thank you all the Obooters who watched this session. Thank you, Swapan and Ryan, for the great discussion and for all the things we learned today. And last but not least, go to Oboot.co to learn about more opportunities to collect digital values and help us plant trees. Thank you.